can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like $100,000.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here. I'm founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders like the founders of P90X, Atari, many more, how they overcome big challenges in life and business. I'm especially excited today. We have Lee Bellinger. He's founder of IndependentLivingNews.com, which has a private subscription, and they have tons of products for off-the-grid living, survival in an emergency, gaining independent income, and much more. Basically, they teach people to take control of their lives. He's the inventor of PowerWhisperer home power backup system, which we'll talk about, and how he created it, the research done behind it. Independent Living is noted for its successful predictions. And Lee, this was amazing. In February 1998, Lee published a front-page illustrated prediction story on the destruction of the World Trade Center by terrorists, which we'll talk about how he knew that. He has been recognized by the White House for his work in state legislature and is a hero among his subscribers. Lee, thanks for joining me.
Hi, Jeremy. It's great to be here. Thanks for that great introduction.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. And, we're in the Titans group together with Brian Kurtz, which we'll talk about. But, I always like to include a fun fact. And a fun fact about you, which your wife would say is strange about you, is you read 5 to 6 newspapers a day.
Yeah, I do.
So what's your morning routine look like?
Oh, I'll try to get up as early as I possibly can, and I like to read the Investor Business Daily and the London Journal, and I read the Wall Street Journal, and I like to read the New York Times. Some of my readers might be surprised about that, and just different newspapers, Investors Business Daily, the Times of London. I said that. So it's these are all things where you get a sense of fluidity about current events. If you read a newspaper long enough, if you read them pretty much every day, the stories start to take on a fluidity, and there's even a predictive piece of it where you can say with reasonable certainty that this is gonna come to fruition in a few months, and you kind of see it peeking out behind the headlines. And of course I watch some of the news channels. I watch around on the news channels and read books like anybody else, but and specialty publications. But
it's
my wife
interesting.
thinks it's a little bit. She thinks I've taken geekdom to a new level.
So will you waking up at like 4 a.m., 5 a.m.? How long does it take?
I get up, it's about a 3-hour. It's a 3-hour slog, but I mean that's when my brain is the freshest.
So like 5 to 8, you could be.
I'll get up. I'll get up. Sometimes I'll get up at 5, and I'll work until about 9, and then I have breakfast, and I actually go back to sleep for a little while to let I'm really good at taking cat naps. I've been good at it ever since I've been in college. I can do that. I can sleep anywhere, practically anywhere.
Yeah, I want to talk about your predictions, Lee. And first off, obviously, how did you know in February 1998 when you published that? What was going through your head about the World Trade Center?
People thought I was an alarmist, but I remember telling people, I said, well, first it had been attacked already. So,
really?
And that's the thing with these attacks. They tend to have a pattern where they're, and I was just mentioning one of the reasons I'm big on talking about the threats to the power grid, because there have been some mock attacks on the power grid, just like the World Trade Center. It's one of the things that concerns me a lot. But the World Trade Center in particular I had been reading about, the rising escalation of terrorism and the fact that they had been attacked. They tried to topple the tower, and it's such an irresistible landmark. It was very troubling to me. My specific prediction was a nuclear attack or a semi-nuclear attack. I didn't predict the airplane piece of it, but I actually did the pictures of the World Trade Centers being destroyed. And
is it on one of those pictures behind you? What is behind you there?
It's those are manuals and things that I produce. I produced about 160 manuals and white papers on everything from reclaiming your privacy to how to hire and fire and manage lawyers for business people, and just a lot of other. I have probably my ultimate guide to self-reliant living, which basically teaches you how to shape the landscape of your life so that it's optimal for you. Yeah. And so that you can, have, a much a lot less stress in your life by covering basic things that make you actually marginally better, safer. And,
what was on the cover of that? So you said on the cover of that issue was the World Trade Center, and it.
Yes, it was, and I also on page 2, it was all original artwork. On page 2, I also sketched out the probable attack on the Capitol that might parallel it. Well,
really?
the third plane that I think it was the Shanks, the plane that went down in Pennsylvania, apparently was headed for the Capitol. So weird. I mean, it was strange. I when I saw it happening, I was like going, "Oh my God!" So this is how it's going to happen.
Wow.
And I was a little relieved that it was a non-nuclear attack. I knew it would be a limited number of people at least. And
why did you think that? Was there anything else besides the previous attack on the World Trade Center that made you predict this?
Well, it's a little like Pearl Harbor. We knew America was going to be hit. We just didn't know where. Yeah. It was very clear that the rise of a terrorist with global reach. They had in 1998, the Clinton administration had attacked in 3 different locations around the globe, trying to tamp it down. But the USS Cole, and just other events, warning signs leading up to the final, end game with the World Trade Center. Yeah. And so and then the other thing about it was essentially we were wide open to a border infiltration operation, which is exactly what 9/11 was. So. It was just one of those things, Jeremy. Where,
that's crazy. Unfortunately, you were right on that.
Yeah, very unfortunately, it was very stressful for me, and I was very distressed about it.
How was it received when you put that on the cover originally?
Oh, people thought I was an alarmist. People thought that this is only happens in Hollywood. It sure looked like a Hollywood production, didn't it? Except it was real. And I was like, I just, there were other experts. There were real experts that were predicting it was a matter of when. I was quoting a lot of experts, but it really proves a point that I like to make to people is that you can't look to politics to protect you. I did 20 years. I published the American Sentinel, which did nothing but talk about politics and complain about politics. Yeah. And I reached a point of critical mass where I said, you know what? I don't care about politics. I care about people taking charge of their lives and preparing themselves for what's going to come around the bend. So I'm kind of a post-political person. I was very ridiculously opinionated on all this. Now I'm like, I kind of look at all the political people largely the same.
You were really opinionated on politics, you mean?
But I kind of got it out of my system. I mean, it's what drew me to political stuff to begin with and reporting. So, of course, I had a passion for it. But over time, I'm going like, no, personal self-reliance, post-political. There's nothing wrong with voting right. Voting for freedom is always a good idea, and I tell that to my readers. But the first step is to take charge of your little corner of the world. Because the more people that do that, it spreads, it gets bigger, and that's where the real hope for the country comes in. Not in political change, because you just see the same parade of people. It's different faces, but it's always the same eddies, currents, and backwater. Every once in a while, you'll see a political person who's a step above or a grade above, but it's not the norm. It's not. Government cannot be proactive. That's the real lesson of terrorism. Is that it can't be proactive. It always responds to the last thing that happened. Government is not designed to act, no matter how much evidence there is that something terrible is going to happen. It has to happen first. It has to have. It's like airplane safety. Nobody ever dies on a plane in vain, ever. But they never fix the problems in advance. They wait until there's several mishaps, and then when there's a body count, that's
when in business too, right? There's in the manual, a rule gets written in because someone Well,
not necessarily. Like, did you catch that thing with the TSA? The TSA doesn't have the ability to expand the amount of service it's got. But like the airlines have a surge capability. When they get busy, they know they're going to get busy and they plan for it. But the TSA, even though they know that there's going to be more people in the summertime, they don't scale up for it. So guess what? The airlines are actually coming over and providing the scale up. So they're helping people undo their bags. And so the airlines are pitching in to help this government-run agency that can't do anything proactively.
Yeah.
Not even, and I mean, at Christmas time, FedEx knows that they're going to have more deliveries, so they scale up. So why wouldn't the TSA scale up when they realize? It's a great example, though, of how they cannot do anything proactively, and when people count on that, they're counting, whether it's for retirement or anything else, it's their own ruination. So I just tell people, become more self-reliant, but in a smart way, not that skinhead stuff that people teach. I'm not living in a bunker in the woods. I mean, I'm a rocks in the scotch kind of guy, and I like modern conveniences. I really like modern conveniences, and I like good living, and I like to teach people how to do that the smart way, not all that dumb stuff about hiding in a bunker. So that's what I mean, if someone watches, what makes me different than a lot of these people that just don't. They want to tell people, oh, live in a bunker and do this and get ready to shoot your neighbor, and no, you don't do that. It's much more positive and proactive. Yeah, it's more about preparation. Yeah, that's the one power you've got, is you can say, this is going to be an issue or a problem, and I'm going to take advantage of it, and I'm going to be, it's not just a matter of being safer, it's also being able to take advantage of things that are going to happen in the future that are going to happen because it's inevitable. Yeah, I mean, I think I got that sense because when I watched a video for the PowerWhisperer home power backup system, it wasn't just about like if something goes down, but in the video it was interesting. It shows people camping and just enjoying like coffee or something that you can plug electricity into. And it's also tailgating too. Right. so I was like, I had no desire to buy one. And then I watched it. I'm like, maybe I need one of these things, so. Right. And it's a great backup. It's a great backup. And it's just the grid itself has got a lot of problems. It got nationalized in the 90s, and all these infrastructure issues, Jeremy, basically when a country is this far in debt, it's out of sight, out of mind until it breaks. And that's the power grid. That's the water grid. Mm-hmm. It's basically we live in an age of dysfunction. Yeah. And so I teach people how to make their own world functional, or I try to. So that's the big surprise. You were wondering about what surprises me the most and what was my biggest surprise. But when I lived on that yacht for 5 years, Off the Record too is her name. And I lived up in Capitol Hill. The yacht Off the Record. That was the name of her. Yeah, Off the Record. I actually had a little dinghy. You were in politics at the time. Oh yeah, and I used that boat a lot. What I did was she was a beautiful 52-footer, and I made her available for political fundraising. So I ended up with a lot of political people borrowing my boat. I never charged any money for it, but I kind of got a kick out of seeing the political people up close. But I had Boehner on the boat. I've had a lot of Speaker Boehner. He was the majority leader then, and things of that nature. And all these people on the boat, and I just Tom DeLay even, and I had a lot of fun running it up and down the river, down to Fort Washington and back, and little cocktail cruise. And it was much better than having a K Street office. All these people spend a fortune on these boring, stuffy K Street offices. Well, what do you want to do? K Street office or an evening Potomac evening cruise? Well, it wasn't rocket science. So I got it was just a great way for me to kind of stay looped in with the political people and to observe them. And what's really surprising the most is that high-end people in McLean, which is a very high-end district, part of the D.C. It's in Virginia, but it's like suburb of D.C., an elite suburb, and they're all buying emergency generators and food, and this is even people that were working at Homeland Security were buying generators, and a friend of mine at the yacht club was installing them for a living, and he couldn't get enough time to do all. Really? So. That's kind of got my attention that high-level people, in the United States government don't even trust the provisions that are made for the rest. That's a sign on the wall. Yeah, and then I said, "Oh gosh, this is interesting," and I kind of saw that the survival business really was like dominated by people. I just did, I wouldn't want living next to me. They were just, I said,
They're more
this is,
extreme, or why?
yeah, I thought some of them were extreme, and they just were people that weren't doing it for the right reasons. I still think they had the right idea, just not the way they did it.
Yeah. I want to go back, Lee, to where this all came from, and I'm curious where you grew up and who was a big influence for you when you were growing up.
Oh, I was born in Syracuse, New York. My dad was in construction. He died in a freak accident in 1967, and my uncle was down in Charlotte.
Oh my God!
And my family migrated to Charlotte, North Carolina, in 1969, and I've been there. My family is still there, and I went to D.C. In Washington D.C. I probably spent half my professional adult life in D.C. and toggling between there and Charlotte. So
how long were you in Syracuse area?
I moved when I was 10, so no, that was 1969.
Yeah,
so
traumatic.
Yeah,
Jeez.
but that's it. But now we're in Charlotte, and my family is alive and whole, and it's great. And so we're.
When you were growing up, Lee, what did you want to be?
I never thought about it, honestly.
You didn't think about it. What were you thinking about when you were young?
Pretty much everything I've gotten into is by accident anyway. I mean, I just kind of go in the direction.
I mean, were you into like politics then? Were you into sports then?
I was into politics.
You were, even at a young age.
I always liked politics. My mother kind of got me going on that. So yeah, it was. And then I went to Hillsdale College in South Central Michigan.
Right. I was reading that, and that seemed random to me.
Well, what happened was my mom kind of got me hooked on it, and she said go up to this little seminar they had over the summer, and they made an offer for me to go to the school, and I had and so I ended up going to Hillsdale, and then I joined the Washington Hillsdale internship program, and from there I got an internship in Congressman Dan Coates' office, who was a freshman, and I ended up landing a job as a legislative aide, and so I ended up getting credentialed as a Hill staffer, and so Hillsdale did a hell of a lot for me. It was great. Great thing for me. I was very fortunate, and then once I worked in a couple of congressional offices, and then ultimately I went into doing activism, and then after that finally into publishing.
Yeah.
So that's what.
So you were right into politics right after college, then.
Pretty much.
So what was the most, I guess, craziest thing you saw being in politics for 20 years?
I don't even know where to start on that. At the Capitol Yacht Club where I was,
because you're like on the inside here, so
was like, let's just say that
let's talk about you're both called off the record.
Yeah.
So,
by the way, dinghy,
I'm sure
name of the dinghy. If you wanted, the name of the dinghy was called On the Record. So if you wanted to be on the record, you could sit in the little dinghy on the back of the boat and go in the water. But that was it.
That's hilarious.
I had a little plaque that just said everything on this boat is off the record. Probably the reason people trusted me in politics was because I knew how to keep my mouth shut.
Yeah.
And I saw plenty of things that I just saw a lot of things that you just in a marina, when you live in a marina, you learn to look the other way no matter what you see.
You have to give me an example of something you can say that's not.
Let's put it this way. There was a member of Congress in the Senate who got busted for some embarrassing stuff in a bathroom, and there was a lot of indicators that this individual, there was a lot of stuff that just, the Post would come over looking for him and trying to find him at strange hours, and, just things like that, just odd, circumstantial things. But I was on the admissions committee for the yacht club, and one of the guys, one time they were trying to get Ted Stevens back into the club, who'd let his membership expire, and he was like considered kind of an old corrupt Republican. He's since died in an airplane crash, and there was a Interior Secretary and another senator trying to get him back in, and I'm on this committee, and I'm like going, what the heck? Oh my God, this is like, it was just crazy. So
in 1987, Lee, you were honored by the White House. What happened with that?
I was running something called the Coalition Against Nuclear Annihilation.
Yeah.
There was something called the Freeze Movement, which basically said we should freeze the level of weapons, basically we freeze the level of nuclear weapons where they are. Well, at that time, the Soviets had a numerical advantage, and they were passing freeze resolutions in state legislatures. So I literally took their language and applied it to missile defense and called it the peace shield. And I got pro-peace shield resolutions passed in different state legislatures, including Guam. And so these were basically pro-missile defense resolutions that were based on freeze language that the left had originally done, but I simply took it and turned their language into pro-missile defense language. And ultimately, Reagan got the missiles pulled out of the intermediate missiles pulled out. They eliminated an entire class instead of freezing them in place. So, but I got these resolutions passed, and so I got a call from the White House Office of Public Liaison and said the president's sending me a letter, which was a very sweet letter, and mentioned our private conversation we'd had. I met him at some event in D.C., and for whatever reason we started talking. Well, what's cool is when you're talking to a president, nobody interrupts until he is done.
So what did you talk about?
Not for like 3 minutes. I was telling him about my coalition against nuclear annihilation, and then apparently a month or two later, I got this call, and they said that this letter is coming for you, and that's how it happened. So it was very cool. But I operated as kind of an outside operator, on that particular issue for them, because there weren't a lot of people that had any ideas about missile defense then. In 1983, when that stuff was introduced, it was like a strange idea. And it's not something that now you've got different countries with these missile defense systems, and so it's actually been accepted. But at first, it was quite controversial.
Right. So,
what got you into the publishing world? Like everything you're describing, I see you just continuing in government. Where did publishing come in?
I was working for a newsletter called American Sentinel. And basically, Jeremy, I got a.
What were you doing for them?
I was a freelance writer, and I did it freelance for 3 years. And then on the third year, I went to hit the boss up for a raise, and instead of raising my pay, he had a plan for me to buy it.
Really?
And I bought it. And so I was very.
What did he see? Like, you obviously went in for a raise, and he saw something in you at the time.
He didn't want the newsletter anymore, but I mean, it was.
He didn't want it.
No, it was. He had. This is like the Phillips Publishing newsletter empire. So there were.
It's a big newsletter.
It was, and now it is. Yes, and it became Independent Living about 10 years ago.
Okay.
But it was originally American Sentinel, and then I changed the name and focus to make it more about self-reliance. Yeah. It still covers a lot of political stuff. I cover political stuff, but it's generic. It's not like I'm doing, I think Matt Drudge does such a fine job, and others do such a fine job of the political stuff. There was just no need for me to continue doing it. But I give my analysis to people of financial issues and national security issues and other things based on my understanding of politics. So I do have that going for me. If you understand politics, there's a lot of things you can predict safely. Yeah. Politics is relatively predictable once you understand how it works.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you read 6 newspapers a day every day, then it becomes predictable.
I was caught off guard by the Donald Trump thing. I didn't catch that. I didn't see that one coming, and I didn't even take it seriously at first. But it didn't take me long to catch on that he was onto a better path than people realized he would be initially. So and then I realized what I said. Oh my gosh! Okay, well this is going to work for him.
So you walk in to ask for a raise, and then your boss says what to you?
He says, "Have you ever thought about becoming a publisher?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, we've got a plan for you, Lee. We think you could publish this, and we'll assign you a person to teach you the business." And they did. They taught me a fellow named Richard Stanton Jones, who's passed away. Very, very generous people. And it took me, and within a few months, I was publishing the newsletter, and I've been doing that ever since, without stopping.
So early on in the American Sentinel days, what did you do to help grow so your job is, you have other writers too at the time, or was it just you?
That time it was all me.
It was all you?
It still is, it's still mostly all me in independent
You're
living.
guiding it, yeah.
I had but I would try to come up with innovative stories.
Yeah.
One of them.
What was a blockbuster? Yeah, early on.
I did a story about the Soviets shipping Chernobyl design reactors to Cuba. They were called VVER 440s, okay? And these are graphite moderated reactors that can produce fissionable material and power all at the same time. And so I called every single environmental group, who are very leftist, by the way, and asked them about their concerns about this VVER 440 Chernobyl design tube reactor being installed 90 miles away from the U.S. when it's sitting right, on the water line. Meaning, if you have a meltdown, you're going to have a radioactive cloud of, steam coming into half the United States.
Right.
So I called every single environmental group, and they refused to comment on it. They're
Really?
worried about hugely safe American reactors. But I even did a graphic of the kill zone of these VVER Chernobyl reactors.
Wow. How did that even come on your radar to even talk about that?
I read it somewhere. Yeah. And then the Cubans have a paper called Granma, which is the official state newspaper of Cuba, or was at the time. I think it still exists.
Yeah.
And they were bragging about it. And then I said, wait a minute, what is this design? And I said, this is the Chernobyl design here next to our country. And the environmentalists, the Sierra Club, and they said, well, this is like, Cuba. And they were more interested in defending socialist Cuba than they were in actual genuine. And these are people that had shot their mouths off against American nuclear
why
reactors,
is that?
which are because they're left wingers, and it proved that they were left wingers.
I gotcha.
So then the other that their agenda was political. Their agenda was political is what I was trying to show. But then I did another one in 1993. I did something called the Sandinista voting index, which basically, because Bernie Sanders was honest enough to say he's a socialist, I did a voting index of 21 votes and compared how all the members of Congress voted, how often they voted with a pro-socialist guy on all kinds of issues. And so there were a lot of people that had voted pro-socialist, and so here we are, 20 years later, over 20 years later, and now Bernie has surprised everybody. But that was probably my earliest prediction. That I basically said socialism on the ascendancy in America, and I can prove it because look how many Republicans and Democrats are voting pro-socialist on key issues by comparing how they voted with avowed socialist Bernie Sanders. So
you do a ton of research, Lee. What does it take, for you to do an article, to start an article and finish it? How long does it take, and what research what's your process for the research?
The research just happens. Basically, you train your mind when you spot an article that reveals something key. So it's kind of like, think about it this way. Think about it like an airline pilot that does a takeoff.
What's a future article going to be about? Right now, what's on your radar?
Future articles.
One that you maybe have seen in the past week or two that you're like, this is going to be a topic for the future.
I definitely follow what happens with the power grid.
Yeah.
Very, very worried about that. And so there's a number of probable scenarios that I think are going to happen.
Yeah.
Because there's been, in San Jose, the Silicon Valley, 2 years ago, there was a mock attack. Basically, a bunch of gunmen shot up and near the transformers, and they melted back into the population. We don't know who they were. Nothing ever came of it. Nobody, and it was a clear test. But the thing about electricity is it cascades. You got these really old transformers, most of which are at the end of their service life. They're very hard to replace. And if you look carefully when you drive around in your own community all over America, you'll see these above ground power grids.
Right.
They're completely vulnerable. And somebody's going to strike them. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
And when they do, it takes months, if not years, to replace these transformers. They're really, really old. So no upgrade. That is a big worry I've got about the power grid, because you could have a
What's the biggest concern, for that happening? Let's say it does happen. What's the biggest concern for people and you?
Well, the first thing is most power shortages, power outages are local events usually. What would happen if it was regional? What if they took out most of the Southeast by attacking 40 locations at once? Well, nobody would really know because electricity has a cascading effect. It's not always easy to predict how it goes up and down lines, and so you could have a situation where there's no electricity for quite a long time. 3 or 4 days in, people are going to start getting really desperate. You could do the same thing could happen with an EMP attack, which I was really glad to see that in the presidential debates this year, the possibility of a satellite-based electromagnetic pulse weapon, very primitive weapon, could take out and fry most of our electronics in the United States. We're so dependent on that stuff right now. And I'm not sure how well the country would, respond. It really would be an unknown. It would be a big unknown. But without refrigeration, remember the food supply chain is 3 days long, so at minimum you're going to have great financial disruption, if not a lot of other disruptions. So society is very dependent on the technology working perfectly.
Yeah. At what point did you decide I need to create this PowerWhisperer? Because that's where the PowerWhisperer comes into play, right?
Yes.
Because,
Well, it wasn't just the grid, but I went to a couple of shows and I bought several solar generators.
Yeah.
And I just thought they stunk. I remember I was saying about the survival market. I was like, these are people that don't use these devices.
Yeah. What's bad about it? What was bad about it?
The best-selling one that I could find had 17 physical fuses in it that had to be replaced, about half of which would have had to been replaced by a technician. So physical fuses, and they didn't even provide the extra fuses for the party, so you're in the middle of nowhere. But most of them were cosmetically very attractive and very underperforming.
And people don't use them until there's an emergency. They may not know that's an issue, type of thing.
Exactly, and they were just very, very underpowered. It was clearly that they were designed by people who never used them.
Yeah.
But see, when I build something, I actually utilize it.
Yeah.
Test it, I use it, and like with the PowerWhisperer, we've done like 14 major upgrades, and that's why I insisted on building them here in the United States, fabricating them here in the United States. Not all the parts are U.S. parts.
Yeah.
I couldn't do that.
What's the process look like? So you have this idea from this, because you're really good from idea to actually executing and coming out with it. And I don't know if you're going to mention what you're working on now, but the PowerWhisperer. I mean, what was the first thing you did? Did you sketch this out? Did you meet with a certain individual who helped?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I did was I met with people who are supposed experts in solar power, and I discovered that it was pretty much a politically created industry, and therefore it had attracted a lot of charlatans, because that's what political money does. And so there were a lot of big talkers.
I see. So people were trying to get the money because people are paying for solar power thing.
Right. Yeah. Solar. So they're all angling for business people angling for. And I was watching, and the guys that were selling this stuff were guys that 25 years ago had been selling, insurance, and they knew nothing of this stuff. And so I discovered that I had to kind of do ground zero research. So that's what I did. I just did ground zero research, and I determined where all these other. So we put in resettable fuses. I was the first one to do that. I built it out of aluminum 5052 aluminum. So that it would be EMP resistant. And I'm probably one of the few people that makes solar generators that doesn't trust solar power. So I created 3 different ways to charge it.
I noticed
Three different ways to charge it.
Yeah, you could plug it in the video. You could plug it in the solar power. That's so funny. I created a solar generator that I don't trust solar power. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so I came up with different ways to charge it.
I wondered why you did that. Yeah.
And but I was skeptical of solar energy, and I said, but this could be perfected and made into something that's actually reliable. Yeah. And so I looked for the flaws in the system, and I say, can I make this actually a real generator? I've sold several thousand of them. They're really great.
This is tough. I mean, this is a hardcore physical product that you created.
Yeah, I made it.
What was the biggest challenge?
I had never been involved in manufacturing, so supply chain management, cash flow management. Here I go from publisher, and people thought I was nuts. What are you doing making a solar generator? And I said, I would do it for, by the way, and you could get, I actually share all of the components of how I build the thing, so you don't have to buy them from me. What my readers like me because I actually show them how to build it themselves. Yeah. And I give them the basic parts list and say, this is how you do it. And I produce the video, and everything I sell, I teach people how to build on their own. Yeah. So long as they have it.
What makes you do that? That would be the opposite of most people's mentalities,
Well, because most people are going to want the finished product. Yeah. And they also appreciate the fact that you respect them enough to show them how to do it if they wanted to get together and do it. And I do that with every hard product I've got, because it's also a social stability issue. If more people get together and do this themselves, it's just overall better. So what do I care if a few retirees get together who are engineers and decide to build a couple PowerWhisperers? I'm okay with that. I'm really okay with that.
Yeah, and I saw there's a couple different versions. What's the difference? There's a standard one and there's a pro one, right?
Yeah, the Pro one is based on it's an industrial grade machine. It'll run a small window air conditioner, for example. My brother used it, and it's all on the new lithium, highly advanced lithium batteries. Yeah. And it's also got a pure sine wave inverter, so it's smart appliance friendly. Yeah. Because a lot of they're starting to put chips in appliances now, so they can be controlled by the smart grid, and conventional solar generators or conventional generators won't run those devices. So the pure sine wave inverter lets you basically run everything, including smart appliances. So I'm constantly making upgrades, but that's the real advantage of building in the USA, because you can make upgrades but like I said, 14 upgrades to the PowerWhisperer, many of which are suggestions that come from my subscribers or from people, even the staff. Yeah. We get the idea, and we just, we put it into the next generation. So we added an adaptive power pack and an extra solar panel for people that wanted to double the capacity of the PowerWhisperer, because it's designed so that you can actually upgrade it. It's not like these cheap. I don't know if you bought a vacuum cleaner lately, but if you do, at Walmart they break inside of a few months. Yeah. I got sick of all that stuff breaking. So I made it military durable. I said, I'm going to make this military durable, and I want it to be completely portable. It's got roll-up solar panels that are not quite as good as the heavy crystalline panels, but it's something you can actually transport and take with you, take it to a second home, and with the advanced, and I really keep up with the advanced battery technology, because it's roughly doubling in improvement every year. You're probably too young to remember, but calculators used to cost thousands of dollars.
Right, yeah.
Calculators, and then they got better and cheaper as they went. That's what's happening it's not happening fast enough, but it's starting to happen.
Yeah. Same thing with computer chips or whatever,
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. That's right.
So what's the most popular product right now?
By far the PowerWhisperer.
It is.
The other one is my Ultimate Guide to Self-Reliant Living, which is kind of my Boy Scout manual for adults, and it's how I.
Is that the Mega Manual one? The Ultimate.
The Ultimate Guide to Self-Reliant Living. Yep.
Yeah, I need to ask you about that, because the cover. Tell me about the inspiration of the cover. So, I mean, I can't show it to you, but if you could people can go on Independent Living News.com.
Is this the guy in the hazmat suit with the with the golf?
Yeah, so people can go on IndependentLivingNews.com/shop. And I know you do everything methodically and carefully. So I have this up on my other computer screen right here, because I was gonna ask about it anyways.
It's just being funny. I had this wild idea.
Okay, let me just describe it to people before you. Yeah, describe it to people. Describe the cover to people, because.
It's the Ultimate Guide to Self-Reliance Living, and it's got a guy making a golf stroke in a hazmat suit, and it's just, and the ball's going off, and the ball's
I didn't know what to make of it. Yeah,
and it was really, there was no sinister message. It was designed to be funny.
It was designed to be funny, really.
It was designed to be funny.
I thought there was some
afraid not.
Story behind it.
No, I wish there were a better story than just to say I was trying to be funny, but it just made me laugh when I thought about it. And I had this weird image in my head, so I said, I'm putting it up on this thing.
So why do you think that one's a bestseller for for you?
It's representative of pretty much the best of what I do. As far as it basically
It's a
shows.
manual, though, right?
It's a manual,
Yeah.
right? It's not a book. It's like it's all hands-on, practical advice on techniques and tactics I've personally developed, like for how to function in the barter economy. Not to get out of taxes like some people want to do, but you could use it for that. But it's just to be able to function and make money go further.
Yeah.
And
So
not,
what else is in there that people love?
not to be taken advantage of by insurance companies and how to basically.
Do you have it handy around you or no?
I don't have it.
Oh, you don't? Okay.
Reach of me, but I'll
Okay.
be glad to send it to you.
Yeah. No, I just want you to hold it up so people can see it.
No,
But,
I don't have that handy. But it's very popular, and it's pretty much how to on everything imaginable. Your privacy. I mean, I've got a manual on privacy that goes much deeper, but it teaches you
like what? Yeah.
50 things you can do to be less conspicuous than everybody else.
Like what?
True privacy is illegal. Oh gosh, everything.
Because this is the talk for people, right? Because people are saying, they can read our, the government can see our emails or phone calls or whatever. I don't know how much this is true and how much of it is not when I hear these things. But.
Well, if you're a person of interest, they can pretty much dissect your life. But the issue really is not. Real privacy is truly illegal. It's not legal anymore. However, you can be less attention getting than 99% of everybody else. And it could range from, Jeremy, it could be like how you don't do the home office deduction this way. And, if you run a little business out of your house, here's how you can get your food tax free, get food basically free. Your emergency food free by just taking advantage of the fact that gains in food are not taxable, and things like that, and use your business and get a water machine set up in your house as part of your home business, and all of a sudden your water needs are covered, and it's tax advantage. So tax advantaged food, tax advantage this.
Yeah.
I teach people how to get first class medical attention and not be treated like a number. And basically my argument is I say, look, you need an advocate in the medical system as much as you need one in the legal system.
Yeah, sure.
And
For sure.
Something happens, so I teach people how to get tax advantage dollars to get far superior medical care than most people are getting right now. So
yeah.
a lot of very practical, hands-on, deep issue stuff where you reconfigure your finances and your personal life, so you armor your life without actually living inside of a bunker.
Yeah.
By just systematically improving your overall efficiency and how you're more private, you're less interesting to officialdom. You're less interesting to lawsuit happy jerks. You're just less interesting. How to set up trusts that are actually smart, none of this phony baloney stuff. And I warn people away from doing anything illegal or improper. I don't believe in cutting corners. I believe in complying with the law and the spirit of the law. And I teach people to operate, and you actually are much better off that way than trying to get around it.
Yeah.
A lot of the survival people will teach people try to get around the law. I never recommend that, because you don't ever want to be in a position where you have to worry about things.
Yeah. I could see the PowerWhisperer. I can see from back in the day when you were living on the yacht and you saw all these people getting these backup generators and seeing that trend in your audience. That seems like evolution. Not that it's obvious that you would actually go into manufacturing hard goods, but an obvious thought process. I'm curious of one that worked well for you and your customers. What's one that you thought would work well that didn't get the reception that you believed?
I have had a few white elephants that I've created. One of them was something called the Sun Trek, which was a smaller version of the PowerWhisperer, but the battery technology wasn't where it needed to be at the time.
It was too early.
And it was too early. Yeah. So that was kind of
because I know we learn a lot from some of the things that don't work as well. Yeah.
Probably the best flame out I've ever had. Yeah. I was doing a direct mail piece, and this is like my very first direct mail piece. Okay. and this was this was mid 1980s, in 1986 to be precise. And so I did a big mail piece on how Libya was a rising terrorist threat and that we should push for sanctions. Well, about a week after that mailing hit, Reagan bombed Libya. So here I am calling for these wimpy sanctions, which when I originally called for them, that was considered the hardline position. And then Reagan bombed Libya, made me look like, oh gosh, he's calling for sanctions. Reagan bombed him. And so that mailing bombed too. So sometimes an actual event can undercut what you're usually the.
That's tough with politics, though, isn't it? I mean, being in.
But often, like when I do make predictions, generally there are a lot of confirming events leading up.
Right.
So that usually works in my favor, but that one didn't. That was like my first big prediction, and I was not correct.
So what's a direct mail campaign that did work really well?
I have one now called, that features the Ultimate Guide to Self-Reliant Living, and it's I'm mailing about 750,000 of those a year, telling people about my company and inviting them to become subscribers and so on. And a lot of people take me up on it. So it tells a little bit about my story. It tells about my predictions, and it's not but I just tell people, look, I've been publishing for 30 years. That's my biggest credential, probably. Yeah. Because the internet has not taken me out.
Let's see if you can see this. I don't know.
But that's
it. You can see that right here. And we have this.
Yep.
I don't know if you can see that. If people are watching the video, here's the newsletter and some really cool information here.
And the other thing I get to do that's really great, Jeremy, that I love doing is I'm helping people over 50 to find businesses and new streams of revenue that they can create for themselves without the internet.
Really? What? What's something you talk about?
You can actually, believe it or not, you can do little mail order business, and you can start it with very little capital. And I've got people like Doberman Dan, and I've got people doing little columns for me that kind of educate people, my friends at the American Writers and Artists Institute down in Florida, and just some other very fine organizations that teach people how to become more self-reliant in terms of their revenue, because a lot of people are a little worried about do they have enough retirement money, and here's how to set up a business. And and some of them are great for people that have grandkids or kids that don't have jobs, or they're unemployed, and they can start little businesses for themselves. And
so for people who don't know what that is, explain that mail order business.
Let's just say
we're talking physical mail. Like people are like, "What's that?"
That's right. But it's very lucrative. You put an ad in local papers, and you sell something like. It could be a fitness article, or you write a little report on your fitness secrets. Yeah. Arnold Schwarzenegger started with those types of things in comic books at the beginning, but long before he ever got noted for anything. And if you look at the history of these, so a lot of people start with these little rinky-dink businesses, but they lead to bigger things.
Yeah. Like, what have you found? It's interesting because I just interviewed someone. He's got one of the founders of ABC Vacuum, and that's how they started the business. Is they would take an ad out in like a magazine or newspaper, put a little ad in it, and for the vacuum cleaners, and people would they'd have catchy headlines, and people would reply and buy vacuum cleaners from the newspaper.
Or let's say you've got a pet peeve about your broker not doing a good job. Well, here's Lee Bellinger's 17 rules for never getting messed up by a broker ever again. Yeah. And you sell it, and and then once you've got that person on your mailing list, you can get other things of value from other people, make deals with them, and sell that to your list for a fraction of the cost. And so there's a lot of things that a private individual can do if they're willing to. The biggest thing is that you got to be willing to continue to educate yourself and invest heavily in yourself. Yeah. And I think a lot of people over 50 are looking to reinvent themselves. I know that's I think you have to reinvent yourself in life to stay fresh. Yeah. And to and not go too far into a comfort zone before it's your time. Yeah. And work outside your comfort zone.
Yeah. What's a good way that you can talk about for growing American Sentinel? What worked for growing American Sentinel for you?
The best thing to do is to create as much mail as you can and talk to as many people as you can about. And of course, if you add value to people's lives, that's really, profit is nothing but value.
Yeah.
You've added to people's lives. And so if I solve a problem for my family, no matter what that problem is, I write about it.
Yeah.
I make that part of it. So being genuine is very important in this business.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of very fine competitors, but a lot of them are fictitious. There's some very good
They're
people
anonymous.
in the business. And I'm actually willing to talk about my personal experiences. One invention I'm working on now is a very advanced water purification system that takes metals, leads, and everything else out, and it does 200 gallons a day. It's an industrial grade unit called the Thunderblue. It's still under development, but I'm going to go drink out of. We're actually identifying an EPA contamination site where there's water, and I'm going to drink right out of that contamination site to show people that I'm.
So this is the last time you're going to see. No, I'm just kidding.
I hope not. I'm willing to risk my wife first. So I'll start it with her. But if she's okay after that, if Donna's okay after that, then I might be willing to risk my dog and finally me. No, but I mean seriously, if you want to be a real person in your field, and so that's something I'm going to step up and do. If I'm going to invent it and I've got a great engineering team. I don't really invent them. I mean,
what gave you the idea to even do that?
That is a great question. There's a group that's been selling and if I'm not going to mention it because they're really nice people. But,
okay, yeah.
But when the drought in California happened, they simply could not increase. I wanted to become a distributor for them. But they had so many bottlenecks because they were in China having everything built, and so they got bottlenecked and they couldn't change their products, and so they actually had owned that field for a long time. And I liked the survival straws and some of the other little things I saw. Yeah. But I wanted to create, and they're great. There's some good products, but I wanted to create something for matriarchs, patriarchs, and upscale homes, people with motor homes, and people, and that way you can go and drink the water wherever you are.
So how would it work? Like if someone got it, they get it for their home, or how would they use it?
Yeah, you get it. You could use it for your community. It'll produce 200 gallons of water a day. And it's got 3 small micron filters and a UV light, and it's 12 volt and it's solar powered, and it's a very high capacity unit, and it's all custom made here in the United States, 12 volt.
Yeah,
and then a lot of other, and it's got a really sophisticated self-cleaning feature, because a lot of these water purifiers that they've got don't have a purge system that in other words, you get your fresh water, and then all of a sudden the bacteria colonate inside the machine. So this has got a flushing system and a lot of sophisticated features that nobody else has ever thought of doing.
Right.
So
that's why they say sometimes filters are the bacteria and stuff builds up in there, right? And it could
exactly. And I solved that, but everything that was on the market, you have to get rid of you have to throw the filters out. Yeah, and that's no good. I mean, in the end, you need to be able to clean the machine. So it's got an internal purging cleaning system that works anywhere in the field.
How long does it take to do you think, to finalize?
Oh, I'll be launching it soon.
Really?
Yeah, I mean the prototype's been built and tested. We test it with these various labs and everything. Yeah. And so
like before and after, water.
I mean, I'm going to be doing I'm going to video me doing the EPA site, but we got to find one that's accessible, and I'll be drinking out of a mud hole too. But I already drank out of Lake Wiley using the thing.
So literally, it's like a glass of muck, mud, and then after it flows through, it's clear water.
Yeah,
right?
It's semi-miraculous because it can turn wine into water, and I'll demonstrate that as well.
Really?
Yeah, not the other way around. It will turn water. It'll turn wine into water. Semi-miraculous, I said. Semi-miraculous.
The other thing that interested me, Lee, was the colloidal silver. So I have this here. The colloidal silver is pretty cool. I was looking on your site because one of the products on your site was 2 silver rods, right? Or one set of silver rods.
That's right.
And at first I had no idea what that was, what it was for. And then I watched a video. So talk about colloidal silver for a second. What made you discover this and enough to believe in it and have this product?
Well, NASA believes in it. They use silver to purify water and air in spacecraft. And it has a lot of medical uses. Even one major airline actually puts silver speckles on the trays because of all the contamination.
Really?
And
Wow.
Here's the thing about silver, though. Silver, if you ever heard about somebody with a silver spoon in their mouth? Well, it used to be that the wealthy would have silver spoons for that very reason. And because
I didn't know that. Okay.
Well, the thing was, silver was in wide use right up until the 40s when penicillin and antibiotics started to happen.
Yeah.
And so the science stopped on it. So, basically people know that silver inhibits bacterial reproduction, but they're not exactly sure why because nobody ever did the science. That science kind of came to an end. But I only recommend it for emergency situations. Some people want to use it for, you go
Why
to your
not
doctor.
every day?
Because it's not an elixir of health. It's like people go to their doctor. You go to your doctor. This is in case all of a sudden your doctor's not available. It's also great for pets. So you can take this and put it on a pet's wound or if you're worried about an infection. But your first step is always to go to a doctor. I always tell my readers, keep this in your hip pocket. So if there is a crisis, like if something were to take and there's FEMA set up camps and you don't want to go around a bunch of sick people and you can't get your pharmacist on the phone, you got that colloidal silver machine ready to go.
Yeah.
Some people drink them like it's an elixir of health. It is not designed to be like that. It's a form of antibiotic, but it's not.
Because some people do promote it online, or colloidal silver and things
that's where
like that.
That's where I'm different. I tell people to use it as a backup. Only. I'm not telling them. I'm not their doctor. I am not a doctor. I don't tell people to. You follow your doctor's advice, but in the event that your family needs this medical attention and you can't get it, that's when you fall back on colloidal silver, and that's what I recommend. But NASA and it's used in a lot of medical stuff. Silver's great stuff, and it's not toxic, and it doesn't, and there's no limit on how much you can have, pretty much. So,
Lee, tell me about the decision to go from American Sentinel to independentLivingNews.com, because that's a huge decision. Because you were running American Sentinel for a long time. Tell me about that process, what you were thinking at the time.
It was just because 24-hour news and things like the Drudge Report did such a fine job of bringing news to people. I didn't think there was really a political commentary by itself was adequate, and there was a change in my thinking too. I got burned out on the political stuff, and I said, I think solutions begin at home. And that's when I started to put my creative attention on how do I make my personal life. How do I go post-politics? I'm not waiting around for these political people to fix things. I'm going to fix stuff in my own life. I'm going to get a better doctor. I'm going to get this. I'm going to get superior insurance. I'm going to get superior. I want to live a superior, better lifestyle while everybody else's lifestyle is declining. I don't want to wait around for the political people to do something for me. Part of it is my distrust of the political system. My understanding of the limits of too many people just wait around for the political people to do something. And when you do that, it's kind of like some groups in America that are new to America. They jump into the economics, and within a generation, they're doing well. Others rely on the political system to look after them, and that's a disaster for those people. So it's.
I mean, all that makes perfect sense to me, but it's still a big challenge to then. That's your mindset. Then you're shifting your whole newsletter and everything to different topics. That's a challenge.
It was a natural segue. It was a natural segue because it's really basically for me to say to people, do you really trust the political system to help you out? Is it really looking out for you? I mean, the people that devised the the TSA, they don't fly, they don't go through those lines. They get waved on through. The people who don't want to fix public schools send all their kids to private schools. I mean, it's a double system. And if I had been the Republicans, or if I'd been running for president, I would recommend that one of these guys say all federal employees have to be covered by Obamacare.
Right.
Things like that, where then put the people on an equal footing. But until that happens, and remember, like Congress has in the House of Representatives and in the Senate, they're exempt from all labor laws. So when they insulate themselves from the people, they insulate themselves from the consequences of their bad decisions, and it's up to us to do the same thing. And that's why when I saw people at the yacht club who were high-level people that didn't trust the system for them, that was good enough for me.
Right, exactly.
And I said, you know what? And I'm going to talk to other people that might just feel the same way if they don't have to listen to some skinhead. Tell them something that discredits the whole idea of self-reliance in many people's eyes.
Yeah. Talk about, obviously when you mail 750,000 letters out per year and more just for one campaign, talk about some of the big marketing lessons you've learned throughout the years.
I write a longer letter to screen people out so that if they have a short attention span or aren't dedicated, they'll throw the letter out. And so the end result is I get some very, very high quality people that pay attention, that want to learn, that want to teach me, that are motivated to change the landscape of their life. And that is a huge privilege to write for them. But, it's a waste for most people. You don't want to try to convince people to change who they are until they're really ready to make those changes themselves.
Yeah.
So,
the long letter, what else has worked for your business in running the business that's helped grow it?
The best thing I've done is I've scaled back the number of employees, and I've joined mastermind groups where I'm working with other business owners who have businesses that are equal to or greater than my own, and I can go talk to them about the things that I don't understand and the frustrations that nobody around me would understand but me.
Yeah.
And it's a big plus for me to know that I'm not alone in the struggles to make any business work.
Right.
So it's I'm one of those guys that I'm mostly a writer, so I didn't cut my teeth in business for real. So
I think you have over several decades.
But I never actually ran it. I never ran the day to day. Yeah. Like I do. Not that I run it day to day, but I mean I'm mostly a writer. That was always the big thing I've focused on.
So one of those people who I consider my mentor, Brian Kurtz, and I know you're very good friends with them. When did you meet Brian? I want to hear some of the lessons you learned from Brian.
Oh, that's a great story. When I just before I took over my company from the guy that was operating it for me, there was a $2,000 a day seminar up at Boardroom Reports, and $2,000 for a day, and I just thought that was crazy. And so I finally, somebody pressured me into going, and I went up there, and I came back, and several $1 million of revenue came out of that $2,000.
Wow.
And
really?
And I started talking to Brian, and then I went the next year.
Wait, what did you do? Back up for a second. So
John Bensavinga taught about video sales letters. Not Bensavinga, John Benson. I'm sorry.
John Benson. Okay.
And he's a genius at this stuff. And I went back and I revised all my scripts and I revised all my marketing, and it all went through the roof.
Wow. What was one big takeaway you learned from John Benson?
Talk about your mistakes. Talk about your story in terms of what was the moment that you realized that you wanted to make a big change in your life and change your business, and tell people more about your backstory, which I was always reluctant to do. I always was selling my product and not so much.
Why were you reluctant? Because I'm sure a lot of people are.
I think that it's just the way I was raised. I never was really big on being the center of attention. Yeah. Some people are really good at that, and then others kind of, but it is part of the business picture too. You People want to know your backstory. They want to know why you believe what you believe, not just what you believe. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. And so people, you're obviously the product of your experiences.
So you met Brian at that conference?
Did.
And so what happened from there?
I got hooked on it. I started taking courses. I was always rather insular. I wasn't like, this eager student. And I realized that my marketing.
You do strike me as an eager student.
I am. Well, because I thought, but I was so insulated for many years. I never looked at other people's work. I always just did my own thing, and I was more of a hunter-gatherer type businessman. And then, I wanted to do more. So I wanted to take the business to the next level. So I started going to school. And that really was the big moment for me. And then I went to the big Titans conference, and and now I'm in the Titans mastermind group, and it's fantastic. And I'll probably join one other one, of copywriters. So I'm just learning. I'm just learning so much stuff that I should have learned a long time ago. I'd be, better off if I had. So with obviously you and Brian have lengthy conversations. What's a big takeaway that you remember from one of those? Oh, Brian he's always a cheerleader for what you want to do. He's also he warns you away from what's called the shiny object syndrome of distraction. He's always like, he asks me the tough questions about my business, understands the publishing business. If I'm having trouble understanding an area where I need a connection in the field, I call him. Generally, I've done very, very well through that process. And he's he's very generous. He's very generous, and he's introduced me to a lot of people. That it's enriched my business life and my personal life, and so it's just a positive thing. He's a giver.
Big time.
And I have that philosophy too. I think you cast your bread on the water, you do better. And the readers know that too. If you're too draconian about taking their money without giving them some value and making them and at least giving them the option, I think people really appreciate that. So 80% of what I do is information that's available.
What's been the most controversial article that you've produced that you got a lot of comments or calls on from your readers?
That's easy. Being from Charlotte, I predicted that Wachovia and the big banks were going to go out of business. Really? And this is like predicting that the hometown football team is going to die in a air crash or something. I had Republican buddies that were saying, you're being disloyal to the president, who at the time was a Republican president, and you're being against the dollar, and you're being an alarmist, and you're not towing the line with the party. The economy's great, and and I'm like, no, these banks are going to crash, and Wachovia was like a pillar of the, it was 100 years old. It was a centerpiece of Charlotte. The idea that it would collapse was just unthinkable. And so a lot of people were PU'd at me over that. They thought that I was being, they just thought I was being down on the dollar and being down on America. And why are you helping the other party? And I'm going like, look, I work for the readers. So sometimes. Right. The other one was Y2K. That had all been ginned up, and everybody had an almost religious belief that the economy was going to collapse. And a fellow named Dan Pilla had done a lot of research and sold me, and he was an IRS expert, and he said, don't throw all of your IRS files out. The IRS computer is not going to melt down. They're not going to let that happen. And that was another big one where I got in trouble.
So do you find when that happens, Lee, does subscriber members go up, down, or stay the same? Does it affect? Do you find the more controversial it affects the membership?
No, because the good news about my business is that, like, if they read me, they're going to read Porter Stansberry. They're going to read some of the other very fine publications out there. And most people that subscribe to independent living subscribe to 3 or 4 other things, and so they don't want my take on it. So they
want a different take. I got you.
They want my take. It's not a zero-sum game at all. So there's a level of collegiality.
I just mean, like, if you piss someone off, like, do they forget this, or are they just used to it in that arena?
I think people respect it. Okay. I mean, I've had a couple people tell me that I was a useful idiot, and and I've been told that a couple.
How do you
times.
take that? A useful idiot.
I laugh.
Okay.
I mean, they're
That's
probably
pretty
right.
cool.
My wife certainly might agree. I mean, I don't know. It's
That's funny.
it's a lot of fun. It's I think that people realize that I'm one of these guys. I'm not uncomfortable with people with different opinions around me.
Right. Lee, since it's Inspired Insider, I always ask about the lowest point and then how you fought through those tough times.
I had in 1993, I went into a magazine venture. It was just the technology was just getting there, and I took over this magazine that had failed called New Dimensions, and I tried to refurb it, and it was total amateur hour, and I was the biggest amateur of all. And
What do you mean amateur hour?
I tried to take on a magazine. I didn't have the capital. I didn't have the know-how. I was a newsletter guy, okay? And it's a different business. And so all of a sudden I'm dealing with newsstand stuff, and it was a disaster. And I had ignored my core business for like 18 months. And then in 1993, 2 days before Christmas, my house burned down, and I was at the worst moment ever.
Holy cow.
House burned down, and
Everyone was okay, I'm assuming.
everything was fine.
Okay.
I got out. My dog made headlines. He got me out of the fire.
Really?
Yeah, my dog Bundy, and the police were the firefighters were giving me oxygen, and they said, "Did we just see that dog leading you out of that house?" And sure, so they called it into the papers. Got on Paul Harvey. It got on the front page of the Annapolis paper. Got in the National Enquirer, and it was kind of funny. So the dog got really famous.
The National Enquirer?
Yeah. Oh, they love stuff like that. They dog saves man at Christmas, rescue dog. And so stuff like that. So that was the low point. And it took me a couple years to rebuild my business. So, but I never missed an issue. I've been publishing continuously since 93. I don't know how I managed it, but I was really
how have
good
you
at
managed
cash.
it?
And my brother got me. I mean, I got in a house that my brother had $300 a month, and I lived there for like 2 years. And it just took me a while to rebuild. But they can't take away what you know.
Yeah.
If you have the knowledge and invest in yourself, you can lose everything and you can still rebuild. And that's the great thing to always remember. If you invest in yourself, you can always continue doing what you're doing.
I mean, when that all happens together, that's devastating. What do you tell yourself internally at that time? I'm just curious for you personally, what are you thinking?
If I have a marketing package that doesn't work, I sulk like Achilles in his tent for a day, and then I move on. And I feel bad. You give
yourself a day to.
I give myself a day. If it's a really big one, I might give myself 2 days. But it's and then I move on, and I'm like,
I'm just wondering your process for turning that around, because there's a point, even after a day, that's hard. If you put a lot of time, energy, effort, money into something, or your house burns down, do you have something that you go through in your mind, or that you do to get yourself out of a funk?
I visualize where I'm going to be in a couple of months or a year or two, and just visualize where you're going to be. Yeah. And remember that and try to read stories about adversity, how people come back, and I pay attention to that. I agree with what Brian Kurtz says about being grateful. Express a little gratitude, especially when things are not where you want them to be.
Right.
But it is the human condition, and the big thing I've learned is that none of that's unique. We all have it can be small, something inconsequential, and some people have really big problems, and then some people have really small problems, but it is all relative.
Right.
It's all relative, and I think that just remembering. But the other big thing is to visualize your future success and to always be forward-looking on these things. And I also just get rid of the negative people. That's a huge one.
Yeah. How do you do that?
And that's not always easy to do.
Yeah. What do you do for that?
Politely, slowly, push them away. You can keep one, only one. But if people that are negative tend to be, they tend to rub off on you. So. Just don't hang out with them as much, just do it politely. There's no reason to be, ugly with people. But identify this person is consistently negative, and I've got, we only have a certain amount of time to do things, and you You got to stay, I mean, not fake positive, but real positive that you can only get by investing in yourself and knowing that you've got these skills, and it doesn't really matter what the skills are. Everybody's good at something.
Yeah. What about on the flip side of things, one of the proudest moments in your career?
Oh, gosh, lots of them. I took everything I knew and did a wedding proposal. I got married at age 55, and I did a marriage proposal that was a video sales letter. It was a marketing that I turned into a cartoon.
Is this viewable online or not?
Yeah, it is. It is.
Is it really?
I'll send you the link.
Where?
It's I don't have it in front of me.
Oh, okay.
But I've got it.
So you did a marriage proposal video sales letter?
Yeah, I did it. It was a 3-minute thing, and I did it in a movie theater, and it's a cartoon.
And your wife now had no idea?
Yeah, Donna, my wife. So she's a hairstylist, so I kept this secret. She thought it was an endorsement of the PowerWhisperer by actor Gary Sinise. So I went to this elaborate scheme to get. And
what if she had to go to the bathroom? Like, what would you do? What would you have done?
I didn't leave anything to chance.
Okay.
I mean, it took 17 people to create this deception, and you can't get anything past a hairstylist because she's a hairstylist. And so I just basically it was a 3-minute video, and it played during the trailer section of the movie. And she thought she was going to see me and Gary Sinise endorsing the PowerWhisperer.
So did you tell her ahead of time, like, you have an ad in this?
Yes.
You told her.
She thought that it was a Gary Sinise. There was no way she was going to the bathroom. So I even had her convinced that Gary had sent a limo for us, that we had hit it off, and he'd sent a limo for us. And so there was no chance for her to be late. And so she was in there waiting for the Gary Sinise thing, and she, I had her bring her friends and all, so she was all excited, and it was a wedding proposal that was a cartoon.
Wow, that's amazing.
And so it's funny. It's about 3 minutes. It was my first foray into comedy, so it's a 100% conversion rate on the video.
So if you want to hire Lee for doing a VSL
that's right.
proposal,
I'm the only guy that said
he has 100% conversion.
Of course, it was an audience. It was an audience of one, but it would have been a big awful thing if I hadn't made it work. So it was fun. It was it highlighted a lot of funny things.
This is online. Like, someone could actually watch this.
Oh yeah.
Like, when I post this.
When I send this to you, when we're off, I'll shoot it to you so you can see it for yourself.
Am I allowed to post it below?
Oh, yeah.
In the post?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
That's amazing, Lee. So what about business-wise? What's been a big milestone for you and proud moment?
The biggest one probably was when I created the PowerWhisperer, because I created 99 prototypes.
Wow.
And I sent this out to my list, and I sold 628 units, thinking I only had less than 100, and I expected to sell half of that.
Really?
So I knocked it way out of the park, not realizing.
Yeah, these units are not inexpensive either.
At that time they were $2,000 each.
Yeah.
Now I have them in ranging from $3,000 to $6,000 units, different levels of units.
Yeah.
A couple of different models, versions.
Yeah. Wow.
So that was my first truly. I mean, I'd had lots of steady successes, but that was probably the most noteworthy business success.
That was huge.
Put me into the manufacturing business right away.
Right.
So, and that took about $1 million to master that.
Congratulations. Yeah.
So, before I forget,
go ahead.
You said that top 3 people I want to meet.
Yeah.
Just in case you got any connections.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Clint Eastwood. Okay. Henry Kissinger, and the other one is Marcus Lemonis. Do you know who that is?
Of course.
One of my favorite TV shows.
Yeah, I watch that all the time.
Yeah. So any of those 3 would
I think
be
he's from Chicago area, actually.
Yeah.
Clint Eastwood, Henry Kissinger, and Marcus Lemonis.
Now Trump just went to see Kissinger, so he might be. He's 93, so he's up there, but he's doing. Looks like I've read some of his recent articles, and they're pretty darn good.
So you are a religious prophet watcher TV show?
I love that show. I think that going in there and telling owners they have their head up their butt is a great way to I like Chef Ramsay too for that reason.
What do you think Marcus Lemonis would tell you? if he came in?
Oh, I already know. He'd say, "Yeah, you're doing this wrong, and you need to fix this, and this is awesomely, and these work." But I don't know how to scale the PowerWhisperer. I've only been selling it to my audience, and he said, "You don't know how to scale this," and I'm going like, "Really? You think I don't know that already? Okay, I don't know how to scale it."
You've had this fictitious conversation. You're already ready for it. I'm gonna write in the prophet and have him show up at your door.
So that guy's cool. I think he's pretty righteous. I like him and Chef Ramsay, and sometimes when I'm at a restaurant, I noticed it's had an effect on restaurants.
Yeah.
So,
Lee, this is fantastic. I really appreciate your time. I have one last question for you, but before I ask, where should we point people towards? Should they go to independentlivingnews.com? Where else should they find you?
My email address?
No, if you want, but
no. Lee Bellinger, independentlivingnews.com, and I'm Lee.Bellinger at American Lantern Press if they want to send an email to me.
Any particular post they should check out on independentlivingnews.com?
I don't really know. I don't know.
Okay. I would suggest if you check out YouTube, the video on the PowerWhisperer is really interesting.
Yes.
So
I don't know that link name, but if you
I mean, it's on your YouTube channel, so that's how I found it.
YouTube channel.
So my last question, Lee, we talked a lot about predictions. So I'm wondering about what your predictions are now, whether it's health or I know you talked about the grid. What are some of the big predictions that people should look out for now?
I'm predicting. I'm predicting the collapse of or the great distress of a lot of America's enemies who are dependent on state-owned oil enterprises, and this is like Russia, OPEC. You're already seeing signs that it's collapsing their business, their models, and I think this is a huge shift in global power in favor of the United States and U.S. energy independence, which has been achieved, and and it was achieved by accident because Obama was so hard on the oil companies. They started operating really smartly, and they got so smart that they actually made a massive breakthrough that nobody predicted, including me. And so like Russia and all these other countries and Venezuela, they were dictatorships that were based on cheap, easy oil money. All of a sudden, now that it's plentiful and we no longer need them, it's a huge shift. It'll be interesting to see. I think that's a really, really big shift. The other thing I've been predicting is for 3 years I've been predicting in the final months of the Obama administration and a possible clash with the Chinese in the South China Sea, which has been making a lot of news in the last year and a half now. But I'm predicting that some kind of I'm thinking that they might punch the Japanese Navy in the nose and expect us to come in. But I think there's something that might happen there before Obama leaves. So maybe between Japan and China, I did a story, World War III in 3 years, and that was written 2.5 years ago. Yeah, and it basically was that rising tensions in the South China Sea and the danger to U.S. aircraft carriers. I'm very worried about that. How that might happen, not by a direct attack by the Chinese, but because certain treaty obligations put us in a funny position there.
Yeah. What have we not talked about with independentlivingnews.com? Anything that's important that we left out?
No, not really. I think you've covered pretty well what I'm about and what I do, and I think I do think that I don't know. I think we covered it.
Yeah. You know what I think? I think I'd love to see more videos online with you in them on your channel.
Okay.
So that's just
we started. Thank you. We're doing more of that. We're doing more of that.
I saw that.
I have a lot of fun
watched
with
a few. Yeah.
I like doing it, and it's fun making the predictions, and it's kind of a way to tell people beyond just writing to them. I do a lot of writing, and it's kind of fun to get back in the habit of talking about issues. So.
Everyone needs to check out independentlivingnews.com and go to also the shop. It's really interesting what products info products, information, and physical products. Lee, I want to be the first one. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You. And I'll shoot you that email.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm going to put the wife proposal in the post.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jeremy.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.